Today's critique examines the script for Your Life is About to Change in a Way You Didn't Expect, a motivational piece exploring the painful but necessary dissolution of one's old identity to make way for a more authentic self.
Relying heavily on universally recognized analogies dilutes the unique voice and emotional impact of this piece.
Right.
I mean, we see this issue pop up almost immediately with the core metaphors driving the script's narrative.
The caterpillar dissolving into cellular soup?
Exactly. And a bit later, the autumn tree losing its leaves to explain the concept of ego death.
Yeah.
The fundamental weakness here is that anyone tuning into this specific niche is already deeply steeped in personal development content. They know these tropes.
They've read Eckhart Tolle.
Right. They listen to all the mainstream spiritual audiobooks. When you feed an expert audience a standard metaphor, you unintentionally signal to their brain that they already know what you're going to say.
And they simply tune out.
They do.
The brain hears the word caterpillar and instantly autofills butterfly. The mystery is entirely gone before the sentence is even finished.
The stakes are neutralized.
Yeah, because the author is clearly trying to convey the profound, this really terrifying reality of complete self-annihilation.
That feeling that your life is collapsing around you.
Exactly. And you have no idea who you are anymore. But a caterpillar is, it's a kindergarten science fair project.
It's safe.
It's too safe. It softens the blow of what should be a very jarring conceptual breakdown.
Now, the author does make an attempt to push this by highlighting the biological horror.
Pointing out how it literally digests its own body into a liquid.
Right, but the cultural baggage of that guaranteed happy ending is just too strong to overcome.
So how do we fix it?
We suggest replacing or supplementing these standard metaphors with unexpected visceral imagery or deeply specific micro-stories that the audience hasn't encountered before.
Grounding the esoteric concept of ego death in a jarring, physical, or highly modern reality.
We need imagery that doesn't come pre-packaged with a fairy tale ending.
Looking at physical processes that require extreme, violent pressure to change state is a great place to start.
Like industrial forging.
Yeah, think about the forging of tempered glass. It has to be heated to an unbearable temperature, essentially melted down, and then blasted with freezing air.
To create that surface tension that makes it shatterproof?
Exactly. Or if the author wants to keep it in the biological realm, look at the process of a snake shedding its skin.
The snake shedding is a highly effective pivot from the caterpillar because it introduces genuine vulnerability and fear.
Because of the blindness.
Right. When a snake is preparing to shed, fluid builds up between the old skin and the new skin to separate them.
And that fluid actually pools over its eyes.
The snake goes completely blind for a period of time. It has to navigate its environment in total darkness, feeling exposed, defensive.
Striking its shadows,
just waiting to break out of its own dead face.
That is such a striking image.
It directly mirrors the psychological panic of the messy middle the script describes. That terrifying phase where you can't see the future and you feel entirely out of control.
Imagine how much more visceral that is for a listener, being temporarily blinded by your own dead face.
That wakes an audience up.
They aren't thinking about butterflies anymore. They are feeling the exact claustrophobia the author wants them to feel.
But we can push this even further away from biology into a modern, highly relatable scenario.
Like the grueling process of renovating an old historic house.
We've all seen a gutted house or lived through a messy renovation.
You don't just put up fresh wallpaper.
No, to really fix a structurally unsound house, you have to strip it completely down to the studs.
You rip out the drywall.
You expose the ugly, outdated wiring. You find toxic black mold in the floorboards you didn't even know was there.
And the crucial part of that metaphor is the timeline. You have to live in that chaotic, freezing dust for months.
Waking up walking on subflooring.
Making coffee over a hot plate in a room wrapped in plastic tarps. Shivering, feeling like you've completely ruined a perfectly functional home.
You ask yourself why you ever started this.
I should have just left it alone. That physical discomfort, that draft, that intense regret, that is precisely what an ego death actually feels like in modern daily life.
Swapping out the caterpillar for the gutted house or the blind snake forces the listener to actually inhabit the discomfort, rather than just nodding along to a philosophical cliché.
And it's important to note that the snake and the house renovation are just a few out of all possible ways to solve this problem.
Absolutely. The core takeaway for the author is to simply find metaphors that actively disrupt the listener's expectations and physically match the gravity of the transformation.
Moving on to our next major point, the actionable advice leans too far into abstraction, making it difficult for the audience to implement during a crisis.
Once the script establishes this terrifying dissolution of the self, it shifts into telling the listener how to handle the process.
The text repeatedly instructs the audience to surrender,
To just be.
and to stop blocking.
The weakness here is that while conceptually that is the ultimate goal of any spiritual transformation, practically speaking, it is an incredibly vague directive.
There is a massive disconnect between the advice being given and the physiological state of the listener receiving it.
Because this script is targeting someone actively experiencing the anxiety of their life collapsing.
They are losing friends, they feel alienated at work.
They are questioning their entire reality. Their nervous system is operating at maximum capacity.
So telling a panicking brain to do nothing feels frustratingly passive.
It actually causes the mind to grip tighter to whatever control it has left.
When you're in a state of high nervous system arousal, the brain is screaming for a solution. It views the collapsing life as an immediate threat that needs to be neutralized.
And the script drops highly poetic lines like, "The most radical thing you can do right now is nothing."
That sounds profound.
It sounds great, but it leaves the listener sitting in their living room at 2 a.m. thinking, okay, but how do I physically do nothing when my chest is tight and my brain is racing at 1,000 miles an hour?
It lacks a psychological bridge to get them from panic to peace.
So the suggestion here is to ground the abstract concept of surrender in tangible, daily microactions or psychological exercises.
We have to give the anxious mind a specific, contained task to focus on, while the broader, more mysterious transformation unfolds in the background.
You essentially trick the ego into surrendering by giving it a highly specific job to do.
Let's look closely at the script's advice to sit with the emptiness instead of numbing.
Instead of leaving that as a floating spiritual concept, the author should translate it into a structured physical practice.
Tell the listener to set a timer on their phone for exactly 5 minutes.
Instruct them to physically sit in a quiet room
And speak their specific discomforts out loud to the empty space without trying to analyze or solve them.
They can say, "I am terrified I will lose my job.
I feel completely disconnected from my partner.
I don't know who I am anymore."
By giving them a physical timer and a vocal tap, you are providing a rigid container for their panic.
They are technically fulfilling the author's directive of sitting with the emptiness.
But now they have a concrete framework. The brain has a set of instructions to follow for 5 minutes, which dramatically lowers the barrier to entry for actual surrender.
We see this exact same abstraction issue later in the script when it discusses synchronicities.
Following breadcrumbs that lead to the new life. Yeah, the current advice is simply to pay attention to what captures your interest.
Which, again, is asking for a passive state of being rather than offering an actionable tool.
To fix this, the author could instruct the listener to keep a dedicated breadcrumbs log in their phone's notes app.
Instruct them to actively track unexpected urges, weird coincidences, or random topics they feel intensely drawn to over the course of a single week.
Taking out a phone and typing felt an overwhelming urge to research pottery today is a physical action.
It takes the abstract command of stopping forcing outcomes and attaches it to a repeatable daily action.
It turns passive observation into an active practice. It bridges the gap between a profound spiritual shift and a random Tuesday afternoon.
By giving the listener the 5-minute vocalization timer or the breadcrumbs log, which again are just a few examples of how to ground these concepts out of many possible ways, you empower them.
You give them a lifeline they can physically grab onto while the internal storm rages around.
Moving to our final point, a uniform, highly repetitive rhythmic pacing throughout the entire script risks severe emotional fatigue for the audience.
This is an issue deeply embedded in the actual architecture of the prose itself.
The script leans incredibly hard on repetitive poetic sentence structures.
Constant anaphora.
Right. Phrases like stop blocking it by trying to figure everything out, stop blocking it by demanding guarantees, stop blocking it by staying in situations.
And a few paragraphs later, it hits us with, every time you honor your disinterest, you're making a choice. Every time you sit with the emptiness, you're making a choice.
The weakness is that while this is a powerful rhetorical device when used sparingly, this high-intensity driving rhythm is sustained almost continuously from the first minute to the last without any real variation.
The script is dealing with a journey that moves from intense, chaotic panic to profound, grounded stillness.
But the cadence of the sentences doesn't reflect that emotional shift at all.
Because the rhythm never changes, the peaks and valleys of the narrative begin to blur together.
The audience loses the distinct emotional stages of the journey because the chaotic collapse phase sounds exactly the same, rhythmically, as the peaceful allowing phase.
It creates massive audio fatigue.
If every single sentence is emphasized, then nothing is emphasized.
It's exactly like listening to a song where the entire track is just the chorus played at maximum volume.
Eventually, the listener's ear habituates to the urgency. The poetic weight becomes white noise, and they stop actually processing the meaning of the words.
They're just coasting on the rhythm.
Our suggestion is to modulate the rhythm by breaking the script into distinct emotional phases.
Vary the sentence length, the syntactical structure, and the pacing to physically match the mood of the specific phase being described.
We need the actual architecture of the prose to mirror the state of the listener's nervous system at each stage of the journey.
Let's apply this to the messy middle phase we talked about earlier, the dissolution and the panic.
During this section, the author should strip away the flowing conjunctions and use short, sharp, staccato sentences.
Write it like a racing heartbeat or someone hyperventilating.
Your identity liquefies, your certainties vanish, the mind panics, it grasps, it replays old memories. It begs you to go back.
That fragmented, choppy structure actually induces a mild, sympathetic sense of anxiety in the listener.
It feels chaotic and breathless, perfectly aligning with the content of the words.
But then when the script transitions into the allowing phase, when it discusses surrender and the universe responding to a new frequency, the pacing has to shift dramatically.
That's where you deliberately slow the pacing down. You use longer, flowing narrative paragraphs.
You connect ideas with softer, lingering transitions.
The sentence structure itself should feel like a deep, prolonged exhale, physically guiding the listener's nervous system out of the staccato panic of the previous section into a state of fluid receptivity.
You are using the syntax to regulate their breathing.
And we absolutely have to talk about the use of silence.
The script contains some incredibly heavy revelations that just get steamrolled by the relentless pacing.
Lines like, "It doesn't feel like progress, it feels like you're going backwards." Or "You're not losing yourself, you're meeting yourself for the first time."
Instead of immediately launching into the next poetic repetition, the author needs to create deliberate, scripted pauses.
Literally, write the word pause, in brackets, into the manuscript. Add 3 or 4 seconds of complete dead air after these massive statements.
It takes a lot of confidence for an audio creator to leave dead air because silence feels like a lifetime in the editing bay.
But it is essential for the audience. If you are telling the listener to sit in silence and feel the weight of not knowing, your script actually has to provide that silence.
It gives the audience a moment to digest the gravity of what was just said.
Modulating the rhythm with staccato bursts for panic, flowing lines for peace, and profound silence for revelation turns the pacing into a dynamic tool that carries the listener through the emotional arc.
And naturally, these pacing modulations are just a few examples out of all the possible ways to dynamically structure the audio experience to resolve that emotional fatigue.
To wrap up today's critique, we covered 3 main areas to elevate the impact of this piece. First, swapping out familiar cliché metaphors like caterpillars and autumn trees for visceral, unexpected imagery.
Like gutting the house or a snake going blind during a shed to maintain the terrifying stakes of the transformation.
Second, we focused on grounding abstract advice, like surrendering into concrete daily microactions.
Giving the anxious mind a tangible task, like a 5-minute vocalization timer or a breadcrumbs log, provides a much-needed bridge for a panicking nervous system.
Finally, we explored the necessity of modulating rhythmic pacing, using staccato sentences to induce a feeling of chaos, flowing paragraphs for peace, and scripted silence allows the structure of the prose to distinctly separate the emotional phases of the journey.
We want to thank the creator for submitting such a deeply reflective and ambitious piece of work.
We highly encourage you to apply these structural and conceptual shifts to your draft, and we explicitly invite you to submit your revised work back to the critique for a follow-up.
Thank you for listening.